I want to talk about why we need to get rid of tall poppy syndrome here in Australia, and really how I personally think it's affecting not just the youth, it's not just affecting kids who are growing up and they want to aspire to do things here in Australia, right? But how it's affecting also the older generation, right? 40s, 50s, 60s, okay? And really how it's hurting us. I think it is really hurting us just as Aussie culture in general. It's really stopping people, at the very least, to hit their full potential, right? And I want to talk about why it's so damaging, why I think we need to get rid of it. And I want to talk about a little bit about my experiences of tall poppy syndrome, how I've experienced it growing up in far north Queensland. And really, you might be able to relate to this. And it's something I don't think is spoken about enough here in Australia. And I think it should be. I think it's something that needs to be completely torn down. It's a really old Aussie mindset that I think really doesn't have much base. Okay, it doesn't really have legs to stand on, and I think the reasoning for a lot of people keeping it here is really unjustified. And a lot of people, a lot of Aussies, are still keeping it in the back of their minds. They still have this mindset, and they don't even know, right? They don't even realize. Okay, and I think it's really important to bring it up. So, first off, what is tall poppy syndrome? If you come to this video and the reason I'm making this video is because I don't think it's spoken enough about, and you may be able to resonate with this, right? Maybe have people that you want to talk to about it, maybe friends or family, and they just don't get it, they don't understand, and you realize that something's wrong, right? Maybe you've been trying to do stuff for yourself, or you've noticed other people trying to do stuff for themselves, and it's like this underlying issue that people, it's like unspoken about. People, you might know it's a problem, but no one talks about it, right? So it's another reason why I'm making this video. Now, tall poppy syndrome, really on the basics, tall poppies are like this red-petaled flower. They all grow at the same pace, and they're at the same level. Now in Australia, tall poppy syndrome means if one poppy grows taller than the rest of them, means that if one person starts doing better or starts being more successful than the rest of them, they cut it down so that they're all the same, right? All poppies are the same. No one gets too far ahead, right, in life. And the main reasoning, now, I just want to preface this. I understand the whole reasoning of, yes, some people gloat too much. Yes, some people, when they become successful, in some cases, they flaunt too much. Yes, they flex too much, whatever it may be, and they just become arrogant and they lose touch from reality. I understand that. But a lot of the time, it's the level of tall poppy syndrome here in Australia is completely unjustified. And it gets to the point where if anyone even gains some level of success, they cut them down here in Australia. Tall poppy syndrome is completely, is so relevant here in Australia that it's a problem, right? It's getting to the point where people are very scared to put themselves out there. They're very scared to do something for themselves. They're very scared to break out of the norm. And I've seen this time and time again. Now, I want to talk just a tiny bit about my experience growing up, because I don't want this video to be about me, but I think talking about my experiences is really going to help. Now, just to really go over this quickly, I was born in far north Queensland in Australia, right? And being in far north Queensland, not to the point of Australia, but really, let's just say it's far enough up, way further up than Brisbane, right, where I live now. Far up enough where majority of a lot of working potential there came down to trades, and I don't think there's anything wrong with trades, by the way. Trades and mining, okay, which I don't think there's anything wrong with those professions at all. But they are always in line with the norm, right? The norm is to, work hard and make a decent living, right? But don't push too far ahead. Okay, don't push too far ahead and be someone that's too big for their boots, which is a common thing that some people say here in Australia. Now, again, I understand that. But here's the thing. I think that it's been taken too far, right? I think that people, a lot of Aussies really tear people down, and they tear others down, and they act as if they're jokes, right? And they say, oh, we're just joking. We want to make sure that someone's not too big for their boots. But really it comes down to being scared of success. It comes down to being jealous, right? At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Jealousy of success. Jealousy. And here's the thing. Not just only are they jealous of people trying to do something for themselves and being successful at it. But if they don't, right, or if they do become successful, they don't want to put in the work to do it themselves, right? Or they're at least scared to do so. And that's what this comes down to. So a little bit about my experience growing up, like as a kid, and my teenage years, early 20s, sort of living in far north Queensland. I was born in Australia. My parents were born in Australia. My grandparents were born in Italy. So I'm from an Italian background. And growing up, we were taught that if you want something, you have to work hard for it, right? Obviously, as a lot of kids learn growing up, if you want something, you need to work hard for it. Now, I was also taught that yes, you should celebrate success, but don't show off too much, right? And I think it's a little bit different to tall poppy syndrome, right? But that made sense to me. Yes, you should celebrate. Okay, you should go out and celebrate things and really enjoy your success, but don't show off. Don't go out of your way to say, hey, look at this, right? Look what I've done. Okay, that made sense to me. Now, just a really quick backstory. My dad, right? Growing up, he started a business when I was about 1 or 2 years old, and my mum worked in the business with him, and I saw him go from, well, as much as I could growing up, right? In the beginning stages, at least. I can't remember much from when I was 1 or 2, really. But I saw growing up, right, him grow the business. I saw my parents go through all of that, growing the business, all of the stresses that came along with it, really all of the hardship that they went through, and really them working extremely hard to not just provide for us. I was one of the kids. I have 2 other siblings. I saw them really work hard, and they didn't have anything special growing up. They weren't just given anything, right? They really worked hard for their success. And it got to the point where we'd moved a few times to different rentals, and with about 15 or 20 years into the business was finally when, I think it was around 15 years, right? Mind you, they've worked that hard. They've gone through a lot of stress to the point where it actually affected their health, and I'm not going to get into details of that, but really, I saw them go through that, all the hardship. They had mouths to feed, they had employees, they worked hard. And it got to the point where they could finally build a nice house for themselves, right? And they deserved that, right? They still do deserve that, right? And I saw them build that house, and really growing up as kids, and to be completely honest, right, growing up, we weren't, like, we were able to have food on the table, we're able to get clothes like school uniforms if we needed, go to a nice school, right, and really have a nice upbringing, right? We didn't have anything special, like we didn't have like the newest stuff all the time or anything like that, but really, we were taken care of, and I feel very grateful for that, right? But they got to the point where they built this house, and I saw them really achieve this success, right? Now, growing up, I remember at the time I was in my first year of high school when we got into that house, and I remember distinctly hearing my parents say, don't show anyone the house. Now, at the time, like, I'm still very proud of them, and at the time growing up, I was so happy for them, and I was like, this is awesome, like, to be, and mind you, the reason being is because it was a little bit bigger than your average house, right? A little bit bigger than your normal 3-bedroom house, and that was what my parents were wanting to achieve, and they achieved that, okay? I was very happy for them, but for them to say, don't show anyone the house, was really weird to me as a 13-year-old. I thought, well, I want to show, like, I'm very proud of I'm very proud of my parents and what they've done. Why can't I show anyone the house? And they said, just don't show anyone. And they were also a bit adamant to bring some, to invite some people over to the house, and even to invite some of their older friends over to their house as well. And I was always wondered why. Now, the same thing would happen when my mum and dad, they'd gotten an office somewhere in the city. It was kind of like a smaller town, and they got an office somewhere in the city, and they had their business name on the side of the building, and they said, we don't really like this on the side of the building because we're getting comments from people. So I kind of started putting that all together, and I thought, why do we have to hide away? And I remember distinctly being on a bus trip for school, and we drove past that building with the company name on it, parents' company name, and I straight away went out of my way. I was so proud of my parents. I went out of my way and said, hey, that's my dad's business. I was like, that's awesome. It wasn't to show off. I was just to tell them that I'm proud of them, right? They worked hard. Now, coming back to the house, they would say, look, they were kind of a bit hesitant to invite people over, and they said, don't show anyone. Now, I showed a couple of my friends, just close friends, and I wanted to invite them over at some point, right? And the reason being is because what ended up happening years later, right, down the line, was that when they started, easing into the house and they started wanting to invite people over, they invited people over that we either knew at the time and friends that we'd sort of gained, had relationships with, like childhood friends that you sort of grew up with, and friends that mum and dad had made over time. And it started getting to the point that they'd known my mum and dad for quite a while. They knew what kind of people they were like. My parents are very down-to-earth people. And it got to the point where some of them, when they'd come over, they'd see the new house, right? Mum and dad weren't saying that, to come over for just to see the house, right? They were just saying, well, look, they knew that we moved and that we built this house and said, happy to come over and just hang out, right? A lot of those people, just out of nowhere, after seeing the house, they switched up really quickly, right? Towards not just the parents, but towards the family. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was how, right? That was sort of the roots of this tall poppy syndrome. They saw the house and they immediately started making assumptions. They immediately started saying, the way that they were acting was sort of like, well, they started acting a little bit weird, and I noticed this growing up. They sort of started acting in the way that, for some reason, they thought that my parents and, our family thought that we were better than everyone else. We did nothing to make them think that of the sort, right? We just wanted to hang out, and invite people over, right? But it was once they saw the house, right, that they started to switch up. And it was that underlying thing of, well, now they think they're better than us, right? They've kind of grown too big for their boots kind of thing. And that wasn't it at all. My parents were always the same people, even before the house. And it wasn't until them seeing that they've gained some success, even though they've been working 15, 20 years extremely hard and they deserve it, that this mindset switch changed, right? And they started acting weirdly towards. And I also noticed this. So I was around 13 to 15 at the time. Growing up into my early 20s, I noticed this time and time and time again. And I noticed that, yes, okay, just make sure you keep things, stay under the radar, right? I was always told, like, just make sure to really don't flaunt anything. And I understood that. But what I didn't realize was the reason they were telling me that was because I started to realize that people would act differently towards other people, especially in Far North Queensland, if they showed some success. And I started to realize that people would talk to me differently, people would talk to my parents differently, even if we knew those people prior to really showing any levels of success, right? People start acting differently. And I came to realize that that's what it was. It was tall poppy syndrome. And at that point, like, I ended up moving away from that town that I was in by the time I was about 23, 24. And coming to Brisbane, things are a little bit different now. Being in a bigger city, it's celebrated a little bit more, right? If you're in a big city, success and hard work is celebrated a little bit more. But from when I grew up, even growing up in school, right, you would hear comments. You would hear comments about people saying, well, they just have too much money to know what to do with. Things are just given to them. And the way that people were acting, even with other people that we knew at school, they had no idea, like, what sort of hard work they went through, right? And if there was a kid that was at school and their parents had a nice house or a nice car, maybe they might show up to school in a nice car, you knew, like, deep down that they worked really hard for it. But everyone around me, friends at school, they would just be labeled as sort of like the rich kid, right? And they were just given everything that they wanted and they didn't have to work hard. But it wasn't celebrated. It wasn't like, clapping and saying, like, well done for putting in that hard work. It was clapping in a sarcastic way, going, well, such a big shot. You have to come to school in such a fancy car and show off and everything. And they weren't doing anything of the sort most of the time. And that was kind of my introduction into what tall poppy syndrome was. Now, really quickly, what I do myself, like, I have my own business. I'm very lucky, again, to grow up with parents and that support what I wanted to do. Now, I used to work in retail back when I was in that sort of regional town. I used to work at a place called JB Hi-Fi, which is a retail store. And I remember specifically when I started my business, it was around about 2017, right? And this is what happens, and this is the theme that you probably see. If you start your own business or do something for yourself, when you first say that you're going to do something, and when you first have that idea, everyone in Australia, or a lot of people in Australia, congratulate you. They say, well done, go and get after it. It's good that you go in and do something for yourself. And they're all good. On surface level, they're all good with it. Now, I started my business around 2017, and when I actually started making money from that business, because I was determined to get out of that 9 to 5, and that was just my own personal thing. I don't think being a business owner, you're better than anyone else. I think you should do what you want to do and what you're happy with. If I was happy being in a 9 to 5 and working my way up the corporate ladder, I would have just stuck to that, because I actually enjoyed my job at the time, but I knew what I wanted to do was have my own business, right? And maybe some of that's because I follow in the footsteps of my dad, my mum, right? But other people that in my family, right? And I just enjoy that. And for me, it was just I wanted to start something for myself, right? So anyway, I started this business, and really once I started gaining some momentum with the business, and I actually got to the point where I leveled the same amount of income that I'd make in a month I made from my business, I actually decided soon after that to step away from the business and at least take down my hours, right? And when I finally left that job, right, I started noticing I was getting comments from people who used to work there. And it wasn't the same, hey, good on you for doing this, that's awesome. I would get sarcastic comments. I would get, I'd come in because I'd still like to buy things from my old workplace because I loved tech. I still love tech. And when I come in now, the comments that I'd get were, oh, how's it going, Mr. Entrepreneur, right? How's it going? How's the online biz going, right? And it really quickly switched up. And it was the same theme of what happened. Were in the beginning, things were celebrated. In the beginning, it was, yeah, good on you for doing this, right? But then once you actually started to gain some success, and I wasn't shoving it in anyone's face, it was just for me, right? As soon as some success started to happen, you feel that resentment and people start acting differently towards you. And there was a lot of people that I would talk to on a regular basis. Things were fine when I was working at that job. Things were completely fine. Once I started showing some success in this business that I took a lot of time to build in the beginning. It took time for me to build, right? But once I started gaining some success and I was able to leave that job and start working for myself, people switched up on me. They just completely switched up on me. Unprompted, almost, it seemed, right? And that to me, now, that was back in 2017. It's 2024 now, and I still work for myself, right? And my mindset has completely shifted, right? But the thing that I noticed was that here in Australia, and I've obviously I've consumed a lot about business, and I've learned a lot about business, and I've grown as a person over those years, right? And I started the business when I was about 22, 29 now, so I've learned a lot, right? But I noticed that was me going through and experiencing my version of tall poppy syndrome. And it always fascinated me. Now, that was one of the reasons why I moved to Brisbane. I wanted to be in a bigger city where things were happening and it celebrated a little bit more. But I just seemed to kind of fit in with that style. Right? I kind of like things moving a lot faster in Brisbane, even though Brisbane is seen to be the slow sort of state. Obviously, Melbourne and Sydney, things seem to move a lot faster. But being compared to where I was in Far North Queensland, things move a lot faster, and I wanted to be around that. But over the years, I've realized a lot, not just from my own experiences, not just from what I've seen my parents go through, but other people that I've met. It's a very similar situation. And anytime someone wants to start something from themselves, or they gain any kind of success in their lives, even in places like Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, a lot of the time, Aussies, they tend to really have this underlying tone of, okay, this person thinks he's too good for me now. Or this person, she thinks she's too good for me now. She's gained some success, she's a big shot, or he's a big shot, right? And I don't think that's the right way to go about things. Now, I was lucky enough to grow up having a supportive family, having supportive parents who said, yes, you should go for it. Make sure to work hard. Don't talk about it, just work hard and do it, right? Now, a lot of kids growing up, and a lot of people that I know, they don't have the same level of support. So if the only thing they're exposed to is wanting to start a business, maybe they're looking at YouTube, you're looking at these videos online, and you want to start a business for yourself, or you want to just break out of the norm. Maybe you don't want to do what everyone else is doing. Maybe you want to change that. Maybe you want to start an Etsy store. Maybe you want to just have a side hustle that you love. Maybe you want to become a streamer, a gamer. Maybe there's something you want to do. But the only bit of feedback you're exposed to is someone saying, well, just make sure, once you become a big businessman, make sure you can talk to us normies, make sure you can talk to us common folk now, after you make your millions. If that's the only feedback you're getting, that really makes it hard for you to want to go forward with it. Because if you're met with so much criticism, as soon as you start even thinking about wanting to do something for yourself, and you're met with criticism and you're met with sarcasm, and it's just jokes, but really they're not joking, right? And that's just going to beat you down. If you're met with that, then you're not going to want to go and do something for yourself. And that's what I think needs to change. That's the whole reason, the whole thing I'm talking about in this video. If we want to really become a country, if we want to become, this I guess nation, you could say, of people who are really making things for others, who are people who are contributing to society, and people who are really doing things for themselves and being happy, right? And just being happy with their lives. We need to get rid of this tall poppy syndrome shit. It's terrible. It's running rampant, and people think that it's gotten better, maybe slightly, right? Ever since COVID, I think maybe slightly, but it's terrible. It's still terrible, and people don't even know that they're doing it, right? People think that they're being supportive, when in reality, when you hear your friends and more than likely family talking about someone else that's becoming successful, just listen to what they say, and you'll notice that the underlying tone is, well, it's been given to them. Well, but this, but that, and there's always an excuse, and it takes the blame off of them wanting to work harder, and it really just puts the blame on the other person for being in a lucky position, for being, something gifted to them, or that's just been given to them, or they don't deserve it, or it's an but this, but that, right? And that's tall poppy syndrome. That's what it is in its purest form. It is, unfortunately, it is a lot of people being very jealous of people who have the drive to do it. It is people being scared of success, which is the biggest problem. It's people being scared of success, right? And you might have people on this video, someone might come into this and you might argue, right, that, but we need to keep people in check. We don't want to be like the Americans. We don't want to flaunt everything and be delusional. I don't think that's ever going to be a problem here in Australia, right? But I think that is a really piss poor effort of trying to say that tall poppy syndrome is okay. You look at Americans, right? And yes, I know a lot of Americans are delusional. I understand that. We look at Americans here in Australia and we think, well, a lot of us think that they're idiots. But you got to give it to them, right? Every time that they go and create a business, they start something for themselves. Let's say they become super successful, they earn a lot of money, or they buy that car that they want. What's the first thing that people around them say? If someone rocks up in a Lamborghini, right? They rock up in a Lamborghini down the street. What do people say? They're like, damn, man, that's a nice car. Well done. What do people say here in Australia? Why'd you spend your money on that, right? Why? That's just a stupid thing to buy. And you hear this time and time again. They're like, what an idiot. Who does he think he is? We need to switch that mindset. It's not about owning nice things. It's not about earning as much money as possible. It's about celebrating and encouraging people to get out of their comfort zone and do the things that they want to do. That's the problem. That's the problem with tall poppy syndrome. And if we allow, especially the new generation, if we allow the new generation to really push as far as they can and we celebrate their success, what's that going to do? If it's on a big enough scale, that is going to raise the base level of what we can do in this country. That's going to raise the base level of what we can create. That's going to raise the base level of people now that they know that they're going to be celebrated for their success. They're not going to be torn down by it. Okay, yes, maybe it's better to be at a similar level and not have too many people, being too big for their boots. I understand that. But why don't we at least celebrate it instead? When someone wants to go and start their own business, when someone wants to go out from the norm, maybe they want to be the next big hero, right? If they're willing to do that, if they're not all talk and they're willing to do that and really put themselves out there and apply themselves, why would you cut them down for that? If you don't want to do it, it's fine. You don't have to. But don't be jealous and tear other people down because they want to do it. I just think, all in all, it's going to, us as a culture, us Aussies, this Aussie culture, it's going to make things so much better if we start celebrating others' success and we start really genuinely being happy for other people and being happy for their success. Don't tear them down. Don't be sarcastic and say, well, don't be too much of a big business person and don't, make sure when you make all your millions to, make sure that you remember who we are, kind of thing. Like, it's just not like that. Majority of people aren't going to flaunt and aren't going to, just become delusional. But a lot of people, a lot of Aussies at the moment are scared to gain success, right? And it's sad to see, because there's a lot of potential in a lot of people out there, especially a lot of Aussies, and they're scared. They're scared to be criticized. They're scared to get out of the norm. And what ends up happening is they are stuck where they are, and that turns into a lot of anxiety. That turns into a lot of sadness, right? Even depression as well, because they're stuck here. They want to do something. They want to they want to enjoy their lives and really get the things that they're after in life. But they are scared that they're going to be criticized, because that is the norm here. That is the norm. And it's seen as jokes. It's seen as, well, we got to keep them in check. I don't think we need to keep them in check. I think we need to let people do as much as they can. Yes, there's going to be people out there that flaunt too much. And yes, they're going to be criticized, right? If they flaunt too much and it's unjust, I understand that. Okay, we don't want people who are just sort of delusional, but I think that the extent that this tall poppy syndrome stuff is happening in Australia is hurting a lot of people. It's really hurting how far we can go. Really, honestly, how far we can go as our culture, right? As Aussies, I feel like we have so much potential here in Australia, and it's just being minimized, being cut down, and we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot here. So that's my opinion on tall poppy syndrome. I just think that it really needs to be just cut out completely. We need to start celebrating success, but that's my opinion anyway. Let me know if you resonate with this or not. I really want to talk a lot more about this stuff, because I feel like it's not spoken about enough, and I feel like more and more Aussies are becoming aware of it, but not enough, because they're kind of being kept in check, right? So anyway, I hope this video helped, and I hope this video resonated with you anyway, and let me know what you think. Anyway, see ya.